Sure. Give me one more moment to do that. All right. Can everybody hear me and see me? Yes? No?
You're good.
Okay. It's December 10th, 2025 at 4 p.m., and this is a remote meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates, Standing Committee on Economic Affairs. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates, Standing Committee on Economic Affairs will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. The public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Justina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at JMARCZAK at capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and that information is also available on the website. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. May I please have a moment of silence for all the troops that have died in service to our country and everyone supporting our country around the world. Thank you. And would those of you who choose to, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Now, Mr. Clerk, if I may have a roll call, please.
All right. Delegate Frederickson,
Here.
Deputy Speaker Gasson,
Here.
Chair Harder,
Here.
and Delegate Gallagher for Dean Omen. Delegate Gallagher? Okay.
Here.
And Vice Chair Ty.
Here.
Madam Chair, that's 5. And as I said before the recording, if we could just make sure that we're clean about members and alternates, because we do have a lot of people here, that wouldn't be a problem if it was a in-person meeting, but I just want it clear for the record who's here and deliberating and part of the meeting and who's not for quorum issues.
I was just about to say that. So our clerk has asked, please, unless you are one of the 5 people deliberating, to keep your camera off and your microphone off. And then depending on, because we have quorum issues, if you really feel the need to make a comment, raise your hand and I will consult with the clerk about whether or not that puts us over the top. So thank you. To begin, I want to thank you all for being here. And we're hoping that today we'll be able to really go over the home rule petition and get it nailed down. So what I'm going to do is ask Deputy Speaker Gasson to share his screen and go over section by section the home rule petition draft that we have now. It's a draft. And I'm going to ask you that at the end of a section, if you've got a quick question about clarifying anything you didn't understand in that section, please raise your hand. Otherwise, For general comments, corrections, things you'd like to add or take out, let's leave those until the end, because think of something that you want to include in section 1, and then you'll find out it's in another section. So if that's good with everyone, I'm going to turn this over to Deputy Speaker Gessen. Thank you.
Hello, hello. As usual, can everyone hear me? As usual, my camera is broken, but that's okay because you don't need to see me. You need to see the petition. I will put it up right now. Can everyone see my screen there?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
You might
As
want-
Chair Harder said, I'm going to just go section by section. I'll pause at the end of every section. There's 9 of them for any questions folks might have to be recognized by the chair. And I will try to not be too redundant here as we go through the whole thing, but I'll cover everything pertinent. It's not just boilerplate. And I'll even talk a little bit about some of the boilerplate stuff. So speaking of boilerplate,
Quick question
begin with the
through the chair.
Yes.
Quick question. Could we make that bigger print? Can you make it screen width, Dan? That's great. Big improvement.
I'll be
Thank
looking
you.
now.
Thanks.
Much better. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll kick us off with this. The structure of it. That this is written as a bill, as is any home rule petition that has to go in front of the legislature from any community. And then the bill itself creates Article 11 to the Cape Cod Regional Government's Charter, which is itself a piece of special legislation passed by the legislature. And Article 11 would be called under this home rule petition, high value real estate transfer fee. I'm just going to keep going because I don't think there should be too many questions from that. Section 1 of the home rule petition is definitions. Largely, these definitions are boilerplate to cover bases on the legal side. For instance, your definition here in terms of purchase price seems lengthy, but the idea is to essentially cover anyone who's trying to get around the transfer fee by being clever with purchase price, as in you can't sell your house for $1 and then give them 5 gold bricks 3 weeks from now in order to get around the transfer fee, right? It just covers anything of value that could be given in exchange for property. So through and through, this is boilerplate that's been included in every home rule petition that's been passed up by our communities or in bills that are trying to create a transfer fee at the legislature, except 4 items that are unique to this one. I'll draw your attention to line 6, which is participating municipality, which is going to be used throughout the ordinance, is defined as any city or town within Barnstable County that has accepted the provisions of this ordinance. Meaning, through and through, when you see participating municipality throughout this ordinance, it just means a town that's voted either by their town council or town meeting actually accept the transfer fee within the community and everything that comes with it. Meaning any municipality that doesn't vote to do that is completely unaffected by this ordinance, by this home rule petition. And then the other 3 things that I'll draw your attention here to are a municipal affordable housing trust or a municipal year-round housing trust. These are 2 terms we'll see through out the home rule petition. And these are the entities that are going to be eligible to receive funds through this transfer fee. And they're created by state law at these cited areas. Section 23 of Chapter 23B creates year-round housing trusts. Section 55C of Chapter 44 in the general laws creates affordable housing trusts. And these are the same housing trusts that you interact with in your own town on a day-to-day basis. So these are, or if you work in housing. So these are going to be, in Falmouth, they're called the Falmouth Affordable Housing Trust. They can have slightly different names, but essentially they're entities that can spend money relatively flexible, but only for housing. So the idea, as you'll see later in the petition, those are going to be the only entities that are going to be eligible to receive funds from the county through this. It's very similar to the same way that many communities that have requested this home rule petition have done it in their home rule petitions, where their transfer fees, dedicate their funds to their housing trust. And then the last thing I'll draw your attention to is the management board and the Cape Cod year-round housing fund. We're going to talk about them more when we get to section 11-9, which talks about kind of what the structure of the transfer fee looks like at the county level. But essentially those two terms are something that's going to be created at the county through this home rule petition in order to A, house the funds, and B, appropriate the funds. I think that's it in terms of definitions. And then Chair Harder, I'll turn to you if folks have any questions they want to ask.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Gessen. I see no hands raised. Oh, I do. I see Delegate Frederickson has a question. Please go ahead, sir.
You're muted, Delegate Frederickson.
Yeah, stand by. I'm following it on my printed copy here. And going back to line 6, participating municipality. One thing that I know you just mentioned it, that the town council or select persons can vote on this. It'd be my contention that that not be the case, that it be a townwide vote. This is, I know we call it a fee, but in essence, it is a tax. That every tax in town, including Prop 2.5 overrides, have to go to the voters to vote it in. So I would suggest that that be the case in each one of these to accept the general law, and I believe that's how it's supposed to be.
That is
Town meeting could be one, depending on how their charter is written. But it should go.
That
Yep.
is
Sorry.
the requirement. That it has to go to town meeting, except for Barnstable, which has the town council system of government. But everybody else, it does have to go through town meeting. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. And Delegate Frederickson, we're going to talk a little bit more in section 11.3 about how this is adopted by each individual municipality, but also just for ease of getting through this, because it is a longer document. I think it would be more productive if we hold like changes, ideas, suggestions, which I'm sure you have a lot of, to the end. That way we can just power through, this, everyone's on the same baseline, and then we can all talk about, our changes that we want to implement. If that's cool with you.
No, I agreed. I think you did ask to make any comments, so that's why I did that. But I agree.
Yeah.
We can wait. I can just raise my hand the next time. I'll just make notes along the way and then go over them at the end. We can be here for a couple hours.
No, that would be great. It's just, if at the end of a section there's one line that you really go, that makes no sense to me. Can you explain it now, please? But otherwise, if it's something like that, a lot of times, as you'll see, you'll find that your question or suggestion is actually covered later on. So
Right.
Thank you all, and I'm
Yep.
gonna give it back to Deputy Speaker Guest.
Okay, looking now at section 11-2, which is the transfer fee. This is very short and to the point. The keywords here being the Cape Cod Regional Government may collect a fee upon the transfer of any real property interest in any real property situated in the participating municipalities as described and as subject to the conditions and exemptions described herein. Seems like a truism based on the rest of this, but honestly, this is kind of the engine of the rest of the home rule petition. This is the line that gives essentially the county authority to actually collect this fee, subject again to the conditions that are included in the rest of the petition. But this right here is kind of the magic word that allows the transfer fee to come into existence, and the rest of the petition is, restricting that from or setting the left and right limits of what that fee looks like. And one last big thing that I'll say about this section is this section right here is what sets aside our petition from anything that any of the communities have been able to do thus far, where it specifically tucks away the authority to collect the fee within the county charter, as opposed to within a town charter. So throughout the rest of the petition, the towns are in the driver's seat in terms of setting the rate, setting the percentage, setting the threshold, setting exemptions. They're all in the driver's seat, our local municipalities. But on this one thing, the actual legal power to create the fee and to collect the fee exists within the county. And the idea and the reasoning behind that is that's the one thing that we can offer as a county that no other petition has been able to from Cape Cod, in order to create this as a regional tool, and hopefully break through the logjam up on Beacon Hill, where they're hesitant to give any individual town authority to do it. Hopefully we can create something that's specifically unique to Cape Cod by housing it within the charter. Any questions on this? Cool, I'll keep chugging along. Oh, Doug Frederickson?
Yeah, just point, just discuss later, does this involve commercial properties or not? And we can talk later on that.
11-3 is local adoption. So this talks about how a town would actually become a member or become a participating municipality. Town becomes a participating municipality by adopting an ordinance or bylaw through the vote of its legislative body, which is, again, town meeting in 14 of our communities and the town council in Barnstable. Section B lays out 3 things that, at minimum, that have to be within that ordinance or bylaw. One, that ordinance or bylaw has to include the percentage rate that the town wants to set. B, it has to include the threshold. So the floor is $1 million, but the community can set the threshold on properties only over 2 million, over 3 million, over 4 million, whatever it is, the community has to specify when it adopts the fee. And lastly, the community must specify any additional exemptions that it wants to adopt beyond just the ones listed in this petition. As we'll see later when we talk about exemptions, communities, there's a list of exemptions included in this petition, and then towns can add additional exemptions for properties in their communities. Section C just talks about the fact that once a town adopts this fee, it will go into effect pretty much the following calendar quarter, just to give the registry of deeds a very specific, clear first day when it starts to collect that fee from within that town, properties within that municipality. And then again, Section D talks about the fact that any community can amend or rescind their status as a participating municipality the same way they accepted it. So by a majority vote of their legislative body, they can become a participating municipality, and by the same vote, they can get out of it. Again, this takes effect the following quarter, just so there's, it's not midnight the day of the vote or the second the vote happens, but it's the calendar quarter following that vote that the community essentially stops being a participating municipality. Questions on 11-3? I'll continue on. Now the fee structure. The fee structure, as written here, Section A effectively says that the fee can be levied on the value of property sold over a threshold between 0.5% to 4%. In English, the fee percentage can be from 0.5% to 4% or anywhere in between, and it can vary depending on potentially brackets that communities can create. For instance, Falmouth, when they created their home rule petition, wanted to create a 1% fee on the sale of properties between 1 million and 1.5 million, a 1.5% fee on sales of properties between 1.5 million and 2 million, and a 2% fee on sales over 2 million. This gives them communities the flexibility to do something like that, or just set a flat fee on the property values over 0.5 below 4%. Section B sets the floor threshold at $1 million, but allows municipalities, when they adopt a transfer fee, to create a higher threshold. Important to also mention here, the way this is written, again, when a community sets that threshold, whether it remains at 1 million or 2 million only the value of the home above that threshold is subject to the fee. Meaning, if you have a house that's $1,001,001, then only that $1 is actually subject to the fee. The first $1 million is transferred as it is right now with no change, except what they do already at the Registry of Deeds. Any questions on fee structure before we get into permissible uses? Okay. Permissible uses lays out a list of things for which the funds can be spent. It should be pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go over them briefly. The first is preservation of existing year-round rental housing, including but not limited to the acquisition and imposition of deed restrictions. 2 is the acquisition of land or existing structure for the development or preservation of year-round housing. 3 is the rehabilitation of affordable, attainable housing. 4 is financial assistance programs for first-time home buyers or income-qualified home buyers. So this is more intangible kind of programs that different communities on Cape Cod have experimented with in terms of rental subsidies for people that decide to rent year-round rather than more profitably only seasonally, or first-time home buyer programs where you help people with their down payment assistance. Next is gap financing or local matching funds to leverage state or federal housing grants, followed by any other purpose authorized by law for municipal affordable housing trust, municipal year-round housing trust, or other entities. And this, again, specifically, this seems broad, but it's very much limited by those 2 pieces of Mass General Law that we talked about in definitions that create our affordable housing trust and year-round housing trust. So there's a list of things that those entities can do. And in giving them this funding, we don't want to limit their ability to do what they're already doing. And that's, maintaining, renovating, rehabilitating all sorts of affordable housing in our communities is what those trusts do. And then I'm sure folks here are more familiar with what those trusts do in their individual communities. But the idea here is we want to give them these restrictions on what they can use the money for in terms of new things that they can use the money for, and then limit them to, but not necessarily limit them beyond what they're already limited to by Mass General Law. One thing also to note, we're going to talk a little bit about regional initiatives that are feasible with this kind of money. And then those regional initiatives are also going to be limited to these first 5 items on this list. Lastly, Section B of this section mentions that essentially any fund that any trust, year-round municipal, however it is, that receives funds must annually submit a report describing how they spent to the county, and the county is going to consolidate that. Any questions on permissible uses?
Actually, I have a quick one. I thought we had a line about permissible uses that it is not permissible to put this money into a general fund.
I don't know if we have that line, but I think we can definitely add it. It's a little redundant, but it's still important, I think, in terms of ensuring that there's no miscommunication about it.
Right. With knowing some of the town administrators I've known and loved, I think it might be a good idea to really hammer that home. Thank you.
I'll note that down for discussion after we wrap up. Next, moving on to exemptions, 11-6. Exemptions. Again, the idea behind this is we want to set a floor of exemptions that essentially are either legally required or very universally accepted in every single transfer fee home rule petition that's been sent up. Though to note, and to Delegate Frederickson's point, some communities have sent up home rule petitions already exempting commercial properties. Some communities have decided not to. So in those instances, we did not include those ones that didn't have broad support in this home rule petition, because the idea here is it creates a floor, and then individual communities can go beyond that floor and create new exemptions. So to go over the exemptions currently here, a legally required one. Any sales to the government of the United States or to the Commonwealth, whenever you sell property to a government entity, a different government entity cannot apply a fee to it. At least not one that's, I won't get into McCullough versus Maryland here, but that is the law. Next, transfers without additional consideration, essentially meaning, usually this is by court order, where you're essentially having to give a property over or re-sign a deed under another name. Same with transfers made with consideration of less than $100. These are usually as a result of court orders or for charitable purposes. Transfers by operation of law. Again, this is even more so specifically court orders or legal transfers as a result of something of the legislative action. Next one is transfers to charitable organizations or religious organizations when that property is to be used specifically for the charitable or religious purpose involved in that organization. Next is transfers between immediate family members, and it lists out immediate family members to be exempt from the fee. This is the general list that's usually applicable when immediate family members are exempted from a variety of fees by Mass General laws. So that's the one we use. Includes marriage partners, parents, children, grandparents, grandchildren, step-parents, stepchildren, brothers and sisters. And lastly, transfers of any property that's already subject to year-round affordable housing deed restriction. So those are the 7 that are quote unquote the floor. And then section B talks about that any participating municipality can create additional exemptions on top of these. Lastly, part C, and I think this is important, puts the burden on of demonstrating an exemption on the person that wants to be exempt from the fee. The idea being here, we don't have, a law enforcement agency within the Registry of Deeds that's going to be chasing everyone down and verifying who is a brother or a stepchild or a charitable organization. Rather, like in a lot of other instances, when you interact with government, you're going to sign a form under penalty of perjury saying this exemption applies, and that's where the conversation ends. And the burden is on the person who wants to be exempt from the fee to sign that form and take responsibility there. This is kind of the structure that you have with a lot of fees. It's the same structure when you sign your, 10W2 at the beginning of the year or submit your tax return. And the same idea is here is we're not chasing people down or investigating. You're going to have to bear the burden, tell the registry you're exempt. Any questions on 11-6? Cool. 11-7, collection and enforcement. The fee will be collected at the Registry of Deeds pretty much at the same time as when you collect the deeds excise tax. Part B says that essentially you don't get your deed verified by the Registry of Deeds until the fee is paid. Section C just extends the authority the Registry of Deeds already has to collect fees to this specific fee. And then last section, section D here, essentially says that, the registry is not keeping this money. Once the registry collects this money, it transfers it to this Cape Cod year-round housing, which we'll discuss in section 11-9. But it's essentially just a separate bank account, completely divested of the county general fund or the Registry of Deeds, where this money is set aside before it's distributed. Questions on collection? Cool. Moving on to 11-8, distribution of revenues. So the revenues, as we discussed, are placed in the Cape Cod year-round housing fund. Once they're there, Section A stipulates that 90% of those fees shall be distributed directly to the Municipal Affordable Housing Fund, Municipal Year-Round Housing Fund, or other entity that is eligible to receive funds within that community. And this is 90% of the funds collected from that community. So if properties in Falmouth result in $1 million of transfer fees over the course of the year, 90% of those funds get returned directly to Falmouth. Same with any other community. So this is, alleviate some of the concerns folks had about being one big pool of money. How are you going to distribute it? The money goes directly to the town that adopted the fee and the town that in which the fee was collected. Next is mentioned if a town has multiple entities, so multiple municipal housing trusts or year-round housing trusts, they can decide how that money is split up amongst those. The money is going to be sent to the communities no less than quarterly. So, different disbursement schedules, but the idea is here, let's get the money to the towns as soon as possible. And then the part D here discusses the fact that remaining funds retained in the year-round housing fund may be used to reimburse costs incurred by the Registry of Deeds. And I know that's something Chair Harder wanted us to discuss after we talk about this in terms of some information we got from the administration. So about reimbursing, essentially it can be used to pay for whatever costs there are to administer the transfer fee at the registry and at the county, and can support regional housing initiatives. And we'll discuss in this next section what that means. Questions on 11-8, distribution of revenues.
Delegate Frederickson.
Yeah, I want to have more discussion on that. Basically, that is not very favorable, and we can talk about it afterwards.
Right, we will be. Thanks.
Awesome.
Delegate Guess.
Moving on to 11-9, and almost there, almost wrapped up. 11-9 in section 1 creates the year-round housing fund. As mentioned, this is just essentially a separate bank account on the books of the county that is separate, distinct from any other account or general fund, similar to the way we have our dredge account set aside by ordinance. This would create a distinct bank account. That can only be, let me make sure where everything is. Yep. And the money in that account can only be appropriated by the management board. Now, the management board, section B, as I said, just says that, I'll go back to, I know folks are going to want to talk about this one, so I want to make sure the structure is clear to everyone. Section A creates the fund. Section B says all transfer fees get deposited in that fund. And then section C talks about the management board. The management board is based pretty much identically to the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, where every participating municipality appoints one person, or their select board appoints one person to the management board. And that person also has to either be a select board member, except Barnstable Town Councilor, or it has to be a staff member in the town. So we're not getting, with all due respect to, us as elected folks or any other random folks that are in government, we're not getting just people off the street that might not understand necessarily how the context of this management fund. This is really a management fund. This is not a discretionary policy or any kind of creating board. This is there to make sure the interests of each individual community are represented by someone who is most likely either, as I said, a select board member or a professional staff member of the town, who meet quarterly and appropriate the funds coming out of there. Section D talks about the structure of the board. Everyone's on the board serves for a 3-year term. There's a chair and a vice chair. And if someone resigns from the board or leaves it for any reason, the town can reappoint someone to fill the end of that term. And again, the idea being here that it's not necessarily every town on Cape Cod that gets a seat on the board, but every town on Cape Cod that has a transfer fee. So for instance, let's say, Falmouth, Chatham, and Provincetown are the only 3 that adopt the fee. There would be 3 people sitting on that board, but there are also only 3 towns contributing to the pool of money that the board is appropriated. The idea is also to separate these funds from the political process. Again, all due respect to the assembly and the commissioners, we saw how the process went with ARPA. We've seen other necessarily political distributions of funds and how that operates sometimes. So the idea here is to actually make this a very management, non-bureaucratic process, same as the Cayman Islands Water Protection Fund, where a big chunk of money can just be distributed right to where it's supposed to go, which is the towns. The Part E talks about the fact that essentially the county and the county is going to provide technical and management support. Technical and administrative support to the management board. So essentially, the room where they meet, maybe the Teams link where they log on to, as well as being custodian of the fund itself. So that would probably fall under our finance department just to make sure funds are getting dispersed, the check is getting cut. And all those processes would be run by the county, and then they could be reimbursed by a vote of the management board to reimburse them for those minimal services. Again, the idea here is not, a whole new bureaucracy, but very minimal services just to keep the trains running. And then Section F is going to talk about the management board's duties shall be limited to. Exactly. You're not creating a big slew of tasks. We are limiting them to 3 things. 1, proving the distribution of the transfer fee pursuant to Section 11-8, which means the funds going directly from the bank account to the communities. 2, appropriating remaining funds in the Cape Cod Year-Round Housing Fund for initiatives of regional importance permitted under Section 11-5. So this is the 10% of the funds that are retained at the county can be used for initiatives of regional importance. And this board is the one that's going to vote on what that can be, because this board has a representative from each community that's actually contributing to it. And lastly, appropriating funds to reimburse the Registry of Deeds for costs incurred in administrating the provisions of this article. Those are the only 3 tasks of this board, and they're enumerated and clearly so, because it does say the word limited. And lastly, talked about just reporting procedures and processes by which the board just follows good practice in terms of collecting receipts, itemizing expenses, summaries of regional initiatives, and an account of administrative expenses, which I assume will be reported to the Assembly of Delegates and anyone else interested in knowing how the money is being spent. And then lastly, the management board will meet at least once a quarter. A majority of the management board will constitute a quorum, and the treasurer of the Cape Cod Regional Government shall serve as custodian of the fund. But the funds themselves can be appropriated without requiring any additional ordinances or appropriation from the Cape Cod Regional Government. Appreciate y'all bearing with me. It's a pretty redundant section. It says it over and over again, a number of these things, but the idea is we're creating something new. So we want to make it very clear what the scope and limitation is of this new thing we're creating. And then, fair heart of it's cool with you, I'm just going to roll into 11-10 because it's super short, and then we can open it up. 11-10 is additional regulations. The idea of this is when you create something new, you're not going to answer every single question in this even 200-line, 10-page petition. There's going to be additional things that need to be ironed out. And this gives the Cape Cod Regional Government the authority to enact ordinances, rules, regulations, policies, and procedures to effectuate the terms of this article. So essentially, we have now the authority as the Cape Cod Regional Government to make this happen, even if that takes creating a new ordinance to help make it happen, or creating new policies, or whatever that means. We're not just going to pass this. And this is included, again, boilerplate in pretty much any significant piece of legislation that you have past Beacon Hill, but you're granting the department that you're asking to do something the authority to actually do it. Secondly, it's the same thing, but it allows the management board to adopt regulations that effectuate the terms of it. And also, it requires that the board create regulations for how people that disagree with the fact that they were charged a fee can appeal it. This is something that's included in the legislation up on Beacon Hill, and I think it's important. And lastly, this is another thing that's included in the legislation on Beacon Hill. Any person that believes that they were unfairly denied an exemption or unfairly charged a fee or charged too much for the fee, went through the appeals process created by the management board and still feels like they were unfairly denied, can appeal it to the state agencies the same way you can appeal any other tax or fee that was unfairly charged to you in Massachusetts. And the last sentence is, this act shall take effect upon its passage. Hopefully self-explanatory there. Chair Harder, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Gessen. I know that Delegate Frederickson has a lot of things, so I think what I'm going to do is see if anybody else has questions first, because maybe they will, maybe your questions will be the same as his, and then we'll let him go. So does anybody, Delegate Gessen, your hand is up?
My hand is up because I was hoping to also bring up the fee, the memo from regarding administration costs, because that might answer some
Yes,
questions.
I forgot. You're right. You're right. We should do that. We should do that before, because that might also answer questions. So yes, feel free to
I'll
bring
pull it
that.
up here.
Yes, thank you.
Essentially, I'll just brief this. Last time we met as a committee, when we passed the framework, there were some questions that we still had that we wanted to answer before we moved forward. So the drafting group posed those questions to the county administration, and we got some answers. Again, it was stressed to us that these are preliminary answers because lots of variables, but that these are the answers that they do have. The first question was about how much is it going to cost to administer this fee? The answer that the administrator gave is that it's going to be the greater of $200,000 or 0.5% of the transfer fee is what they're projecting as a preliminary estimate. We heard a number of numbers around this when we were first discussing it, from 1% to 3%, so forth. So I think it's good to have a ballpark of 0.5%. But I think that's in terms of how much it would cost to collect the fee and administer it. And then there was also mentioned that there might be some upfront legal expenses to get this thing up and running when it gets first created, which is going to be probably some of those regulations that we talked about in the ordinance. And then secondly, and I think very interestingly, is some retrospective revenue scenarios for communities. So this is the funds that each individual community would collect if they had this fee in FY 2024, and they set it either at 0.5% on properties over 2 million or 4% on properties over 1 million. And you'll see here that, biggest takeaway, it's a very wide range. So by giving communities flexibility to either pick to set their own rate and set their own threshold, communities are really, as I said, in the driver's seat to decide how much revenue they want to collect off this and what their goals are with a transfer fee. Now turning it back to you, Delegate Harder.
Thank you, Delegate Gessen. I'm sorry I forgot about that. I see that Delegate Wyman Colombo has her hand up. I'm going to defer to Clerk Fletcher to let me know if that's okay. Or if that's because she's got a lot of points.
Hold on. Who do we have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got 8 people here. As long as it's not a deliberation and she just has a comment on the petition, that would be fine. I just tread carefully, no back and forth, and make it clear that someone's participating as a delegate and not as part of the committee, which I think I just did, but
Okay.
careful.
Thank you. So in that case, I will take
Comments
a comment.
are fine. No back and forth, please.
I will take comments from Delegate Wyman Colombo. Is that
Thank you.
MC? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Basically, I just want to reiterate that I would like some consideration of language regarding protecting the environment in this. And by protecting the environment, I'm referring to privileging redevelopment and development on areas serviced by centralized wastewater systems and the absolute protection of pristine areas, environmentally sensitive areas. I know I've mentioned that several times in the past, and I also understand that this is a housing initiative. But I don't think we can look at housing without looking at the environment. I think they need to be looked at hand in hand. And I truly believe that we'll have the ability to walk and chew gum at the same time. And I'm asking us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Gessen, may I ask you to, Deputy Speaker Gessen, may I ask you to stop sharing your screen, please?
Absolutely.
Because it makes it easier to tell who's raising their hands. I see Delegate Sampson. Again, since you're not a committee member, I'm happy to hear your comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 3 comments. I've been reaching out to my community and especially community leaders this past week. And they've made 3 comments that they will ask me to bring forward. The first, they thought that the $1 million figure was too low and that the minimum should be at least 2 million. The second comment, they felt very strongly that this should be a town meeting vote. I'm sorry, it should be a town-wide vote and not by the town meeting. And the third, they were very concerned about increasing a fee at this time due to the uncertainty throughout the state and the country regarding the economy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Sampson. Okay, do I see anybody else? I do not. So in that case, I'm going to turn to Delegate Frederickson. Thank you, sir. Still muted.
Gotcha. Hitting the wrong
There
buttons
you
here. Okay. Good evening. Dan, you did a great job going through this. It really made it easier to understand. And secondly, I did not have any conversation with Delegate Sampson about this, so because some of the comments I received are very similar. So we talked about the vote. I honestly believe more so it should be a countywide vote because it affects everybody and there's so many variations in this. But be that as may, at least with each town needs to accept it as they would a bylaw. Leaving a tax or a fee increase, whatever you want to call it, just to a small board is not really appropriate. We don't do that in any other way. Stand by, I'm just going through my notes here. We talked about whether commercial property is or isn't included. That was a question because that's a big piece of the puzzle. And a lot of I sent Delegate Harder a lot of different questions, and a lot of them came up, well, it's up to the town. It's up to the town. And I understand that, but that leaves so much wiggle room. It can cause a lot of issues, and some of them I'm going to point out. The fee of setting it between different amounts. I don't necessarily agree with the whole concept, but if we were going to have a fee, it should be one set amount. I don't like leaving up to town, the variations within towns. And additionally, the comments I received regarding the million, it basically the common thread I got from you're attacking the middle class. The people have owned their homes for forever, trying to sell it and getting some people who have saved enough to buy a home and it happens to be over $1 million. It's way too low. And when you look at some of the other places across the country that have done this, and there aren't as many as we are led to believe, there are some. But you're looking at LA, obviously a much different environment. Their transfer fee is based on 5 million and a second level at 10 million. Somehow we've developed that a $1 million home is somehow a luxury, as we once called it, but now we call it high value. That's becoming commonplace, and it's not by anybody's fault or nobody did anything wrong. And if you're going to sell these houses, that's what you're going to have to sell them for. And also within this, we haven't determined who's paying this fee. It's not really spelled out in here. And again, I think Delegate Harder mentioned, well, that can be up to the town. And that's, again, that's a pretty wide margin that we're going to be. What are we going to vote for in each town? We don't know. We don't know, and have these then once it's voted in, who makes that variation? It's a lot. And then the second piece, even if we were to set up a countywide funding group, right? That and then you have one town that they have 0.5% that they're putting in, and another town is charging 4%, but we're taking 10% of their 0.5% and 4% and putting it in. There's an unbalanced amount going in per community, and then it's a balanced vote with 15 different communities having a balanced vote, and they could be all over the page. So that is problematic. The language where it says other, and this would be on line 81, Dan, says other municipal housing entities designated. I think that's that should not be in there. That I understand why you might want to put it in there, because it could be something created down the road, but it also leaves that as a wide range of different things that could be in there. I just rather go with what we have. That's a comment. Okay, we talked about the percentage. Most of the stuff I saw on line 92 to 113 in that whole section looks relatively pretty good, I guess. The collection, I guess we are going to set up a Cape Cod government year-round housing fund. Is that accurate?
Not government.
Cape Cod year-round housing fund.
Right.
Run through Cape Cod regional government, which will have the deposited money.
The government will only be assisting in terms of, because we don't want to create a whole other entity, we are going to use and repay our finance department to create the fund and the registry of deeds to put the money into the fund, because we don't want to create another entity. Some of the bills that are at the state right now do want a huge entity. They also want 50%, which is one of the reasons I'm so adamant about this one. But no, it's just, we will repay the few members of the county staff that will assist us by, balancing the fund and putting in the money in and out.
Right, that's understandable, but we are creating another faction of, if we don't want to call it government, it's something else. We're using government earned taxed feed money to create another group of 15, potentially 15 more people that will make decisions on where they're going to spend fee money in different communities. But that is a whole nother section of bureaucracy, I guess might be a better term, that will be developed. And matter of fact, even if you look towards the last few pages, it talks about them setting their own rules, different ways, appeals, and that's a whole nother group. And I can tell you from the people I've talked with through Barnstable, if this were to go to fruition, that they would be something that they would vote for. They absolutely do not want another group like that. Call it what you want. Absolutely do not want that. And that would be a non-starter from the contingent from Barnstable. And so a lot of the back stuff has to do with it. You know, whether the county sets up the Cape Cod Year-Round Housing Fund, which I think they can do, but it doesn't have to be funded through any regional fee, transfer tax fee. You can open that and have other monies. You can get donations, you can get grant money, and there could be, you know, other avenues for funding to get put in. But the fact that if we're going to put a fee on people in our communities, it cannot go to another bureaucracy. It certainly is reasonable to expect that we give the county some money to collect the funds, and then maybe go so far as the position that we authorize through the county to I forget what the name we gave it, to help with housing. Certainly reasonable to add that as part of our fee. The towns are already paying half of it or a good amount of it. Okay with that. I did have a question. No need to answer it at this point. Probably Mr. Dutton could answer it down the road. If this money's given out quarterly, it's going to be put somewhere. And we're talking, depending on the amounts, you know, millions of dollars over a quarter is going to be gaining some type of interest, I assume. You know, where would that go? Just a question, does not have to be answered or even discussed at this point, but can be verified in the future. Okay, the other piece that goes along with funding the putting money 10% towards the county fund or bureaucracy that will be created. Everything else in here is optional. So why wouldn't that be optional? That's more of a question. So if a town decides they want to give 10% to the county, go ahead. That's a question. I'll stop right there for the moment if anybody has any comments. I have some other things I'll put out there.
I thought, I tried to answer these questions before and obviously was not successful to Delegate Frederickson's view. So Deputy Speaker Gessen, would you like to try?
And I don't know how successful I will be, but I'll get some answers. No, I think we've heard a number of ideas here, and there's a couple of buckets that these ideas go in. And the biggest bucket is, of course, amendments or changes to the overall petition. I think there's some very sensible amendments that can be made and can be proposed. And that's why it's a good thing we're not closing the door on anything today. Instead, today is more or less the first step to get this actually filed, hopefully with the Assembly, and then actually have a document that we can amend as a legislative body. I think that's an important thing to note, because I do think there's some sensible discussion to be had about adding an environmental provision in terms of prioritizing, how the money has to prioritize the development it subsidizes, or the projects that the money goes to can be integrated into the broader scheme of what the Cape Cod Commission has developed for communities and so forth. I think that's very sensible, and that's an amendment that we should definitely consider as an Assembly. I don't think that's a decision that 5 of us need to make on behalf of everyone right now, but something I'd be interested in. And, similar to the question of a town vote, I'd be open to seeing, personally as an individual delegate, open to the idea and definitely something that we can consider probably with the broader assembly. And that's why it's going to be good to have the petition actually get filed and move forward so we can have something to sink our teeth into. On the flip side, however, there's a number of things that I hesitate with Delegate Frederickson's proposal. One of them is lifting that $1 million cap. I genuinely believe that what we're doing with this ordinance and what the community's asked us to do is giving towns flexibility. We had town after town after town come to our assembly and tell us, we want this, we're skeptical about the county getting involved, but if the county does get involved, we want local control. And when Falmouth passed up a home rule petition to create a transfer fee, they asked for a transfer fee that sets a low rate on properties sales over $1 million and a higher rate on property sales over $2 million. And if Barnstable or another community doesn't want that, they are more than welcome to set whatever threshold they want. That's totally fine. They want to set it at 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 million. Great. Their properties under 1 million, under 10 million won't be touched. But I'm not going to go back to Falmouth and tell them that they can't have something that they asked for because the county knows better than they do. And I don't think that's something any of us want to go back to with our community. The same thing necessarily on commercial properties. Again, some communities want it, some communities don't. And if the community doesn't want their commercial properties to be exempt, nothing's stopping them from doing it. On the question of a uniform rate, I think that is really not a huge concern. Each one of our communities has a different property tax rate, has a different Community Preservation Act rate, and somehow, the core of the Cape Cod economy doesn't collapse over it. And I think the same thing here, just because a community decides to adopt this fee and another one doesn't, isn't going to change or necessarily affect the communities around it. If anything, it's going to make communities that didn't want a transfer fee because they wanted to encourage real estate sales, even more welcoming to real estate sales. Communities have the opportunity to create their own fate here. And we shouldn't be telling them that we know better at the county by setting one uniform fee. Because honestly, what's right for Falmouth is not right for Providence. And what's right for Bourne is not right for Chatham. And there's no way to do a one size fits all. We heard that time and time and time again from people that came in front of the assembly, and we're not going to go tell them that we know better than they do. And I think that's something I'm going to be personally as delegate very, very firm on. And lastly, on the question of regional entity, there is a wide variety of what it means to be a regional entity. You can have a Cape Cod regional government, which has a whole charter, versus what we're discussing about here. You can have, the entire hundreds and hundreds of pages of the CFR, which is all the Massachusetts regulations that create government and entities and bureaucracy undoubtedly. But what we're talking about here is a board that is unpaid volunteer, meets once a quarter, and has 3 tasks: to approve money to go to communities, to sign the check to reimburse the county, and to approve regional expenditures. That's all it's doing. And there's it would be nice if things could just come out of thin air and get done. But the reality is, when you have a task that needs to get accomplished, you need someone to authorize it. And I don't think, again, as we said, when it comes to local control, that it makes sense to go back to our communities and say, we're going to take money from your communities, and then we're going to decide how it goes, and we're going to appropriate it here at the county. Your folks aren't going to get a seat at the table. They're going to want to have somebody that has a seat at the table, same as they do with the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. And that person already works for the town. I would love to hear Delegate Frederickson's ideas of how to do it, an alternative to it. But in my opinion, it's not a big, scary bureaucracy. It is every town having a voice and every town being able to say, yes, this is how we want our money spent, or this is not how we want our money spent, and approving it. It's about having clarity. It's about having transparency, and it's about having public open meetings that decide how this is done, and keeping this from being done in back doors through bureaucratic channels. That's why we want to have each select board be able to appoint one individual to sit on the board and then report back to that select board and tell them how the money got spent, rather than some, individual staff member getting to make all these big decisions on their own. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And then lastly, I do hear loud and clear the concern about the fact that different communities are going to be paying a different amount of money into this shared regional fund. But that's also what they do with the county. Each community, depending on its size, depending on the amount of revenue it collects from its tax base, pays a different contribution to the county. The same thing would happen here, is if your community reaps a large amount of money from this transfer fee, it is inevitably going to pay a larger percentage or a larger amount, but the same percentage to a shared county fund. It's the same thing when we have a sales tax at a store. If you buy $500 worth of items, you pay 6% when you leave the store. And if you buy $5 worth of items, you pay 6% when you leave the store. The same thing here. Each community is going to collect a significant amount of revenue through a transfer fee, and 10% of the revenue is going to be targeted towards regional goals. And then because we have a board, that community is going to have a seat at the table to decide how that money is being spent. So the more you benefit, the more you contribute. And again, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. But I hope that addresses, even if it doesn't satisfy some of the questions that Delegate Fredrickson had. But the last thing I want to say is we really do have an opportunity to do something really important for Cape Codders. We voted in April to say that there's a housing crisis on Cape Cod. And without a doubt, it's only gotten worse ever since then. And who's going to bear the brunt of a poor economy, as was mentioned here? It's going to be the people that can't afford a roof over their heads. It's going to be people that are living in month-to-month rentals in the winter season because they can't find a year-round rental. Those are the people that are going to bear the biggest brunt of a poor economy. Those are the people that are struggling the most under a housing crisis. And as much as I sympathize with folks that have saved up and can buy a house that's more than $1 million and $2 million and would rather not pay 2% or 4% or 0.5% on the amount of the home that's over $1 million, I also sympathize with the Cape Codders that were born and raised here and that can't remain in the communities that they know and love. I mean, my entire high school graduating class is pretty much over the bridge. And that's a reality that all of us are facing. And it's gotten to the point that it's not just my high school class that's over the bridge. It's the kids that they would have had that aren't attending our school system anymore. There's a reason we're closing down middle schools and elementary schools up and down the Cape. And sooner or later, we're going to be closing down high schools. We're losing the very essence of the year-round communities that we know and love here. And this is our opportunity as a regional government to have a regional solution that still, after a plethora of community feedback, puts towns in the driver's seat, even though it's a regional solution. And I think as a committee, I would really hope we can move forward with this recommendation, get in front of the full assembly, have a sensible discussion, and get some amendments in that make a lot of sense. But I think we need to get the ball rolling. And I think before the legislative session is done on Beacon Hill, this needs to get up there. And we need to give our legislators the tool they need to actually bring the much needed revenue to Cape Cod to address the housing crisis. Thank you, Chair Harder.
Thank you, Delegate Deputy Speaker Gessen. And I would just like to say once again, because whether this is politically correct or not, I have heard some interesting talk from certain people who really want to institute, not mandate, a fee, and they want to take 50% of that fee. So I believe that by us, by the Assembly submitting a voluntary bill that at best, at worst, costs the towns 10%, I think it's really important to get that, to get those opinions in front of the legislature, because I don't think anybody wants the towns to give up 50%. And I don't think anybody wants anything mandated. So if nobody else has anything to add right now, I'll go back to Delegate Frederickson.
Okay,
You're good.
yeah, Deputy Speaker Gesson, I hear you, but so in essence, we gotta give 10% back to the county. And then go to at various proportions, whether it's whatever rate is sent. Some could put in 0.5%, some could put in 4%, some at $1 million, some at 2 million, some at 10 million. And then the town has to go kiss the ring of the county group that is formed and get permission to get their money back to spend on it. This is not regional in essence. This is a wide ranging thing. The differences in each community are wide and different. And I can tell you, I get a little more passionate because I've been looking into this. I've been trying to understand a lot about housing and what is happening, who is involved, the different groups involved, and I'm still learning. I mean, just the other day, I saw 4 young ladies standing in line at getting a cup of coffee. The high schoolers, and I'm just thinking about where are they going to go? And what is the responsibility? So it's interesting to think about, right?
Right. Because they won't be here.
Yeah, well, they may not. It's unrealistic to think that they will be because the economy does not support, can only support so much. Matter of fact, in Barnstable, you have to take a look. Have any of you really looked around what's happened in Hyannis and Barnstable Village? I implore you to go take a look. Right now, there's over 900 units being built right now, 4 and 5 stories. And there's permitting for like 800 or 900 more. On top of the over 1,000 that have built in our industrial complex in Independence Park.
Right.
It's crazy what is taking place. And ironically, almost all of them are rentals that people are going to get on the treadmill for life paying rent. We're not, so that's a whole nother separate, like it kind of is an offshoot of the whole housing issue, right?
I am going to stop you there because that's way off topic. Barnstable does not have to do this. Barnstable has no need to participate in this fund. You don't want it? Don't do it. This is not obligatory. It is not mandatory. I know Barnstable's really against housing right now. That's fine and dandy. They don't have to do it.
Right.
But the towns that do want it really need this. And the towns that will want this transfer fee are the kind of people that will be able to sit on a year-round housing fund management board and agree on what really needs to be happening right now. Because while Truro might not be putting as much money in as P-Town, Provincetown will put in a ton compared to some towns. Provincetown will understand that there are going to be certain projects that are going to be of regional success that are going to help like the workforces of many towns. And if something needs to be done, if something can be done to help various towns without it having to go through each town's town meeting, there are quite a lot of things, quite a lot of helpful things that that could come up with. So, I mean, that's where I feel like a lot of your questions, I understand, are coming as the delegate from Barnstable, as they should be, but Barnstable doesn't have to accept it. We're just asking for the possibility for towns.
Okay, so I'm here to try to make it work. I'm not here trying to stop it. I don't like it. I don't like the idea that we keep taxing our way out of everything and throwing more money. I don't like it, but I do understand it. I do understand it, and I'm here to make it work. And I don't want to, it's like every time I walk into a room with anything, I lower the temperature 10 degrees. That's been my career as a policeman, everything else. So, but this is something that is important. I love the passion that Deputy Speaker Gesson has. and we can work this through and make it work to fit everybody, yeah, maybe we can. And I'm here to try to do that, but I have even more to go through. But if you want me to be quiet, I'll just be quiet. We'll just put this forward and let it go.
No, I don't. You have every right to speak and you have every right to disagree with us. I'm just worried that it's already 5:16 and I haven't heard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put other people on the spot and I'm going to ask to hear from my other committee members, not mine.
I please
The
do. I
other
didn't think
committee
that, I
members.
thought you already asked that. I'm sorry.
So-
I
so-
defer to go last. Trust
so-
me, I have several more things.
So, Delegate Ty, I'd like to, Vice Chair Ty, I would like to know your thoughts, please, because I've been doing way too much talking.
But very clear. I too want to thank the passion of our deputy speaker and thank everybody and the representative from Barnstable. Great questions. I want to know, because there's so much, and it was explained to my liking what was going on. How do we incorporate what has just come up to get it in here? Now, does that mean we go to the full assembly, have them discuss it, possibly amendments? But the clarification, I think, needs to happen. But I also am passionate that this should go forward. So how do we do that? That's where I'm
Alright.
coming from, because I totally agree with this.
Okay. Dan, I'm gonna put you, Delegate Deputy Speaker Gesson, I'm gonna put you off for a second. Delegate Gallagher, as Delegate Omen's replacement, do you have, I'd like to know your thoughts, should you have any?
Thank you. I too really appreciate the care and hard work that has gone into creating this draft. I think we've made tremendous progress here. I think it's important to remember that what we have is a framework, that it gives the towns the prerogative to choose to participate or not as they will. And I think it's important that it not set a rate, a minimum value of 2 million. I think it's up to us to leave it to the towns. I think we don't want this to be uniform. I think we want to give the towns the ability to decide based on their local conditions, which vary greatly, just based on the size of the municipalities we're talking about. And well, I think that what we're trying to create here is not a one-size-fits-all solution, but rather something that's flexible enough to work for for each of the 15 municipalities of the region. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Delegate Getson, now you can, I have a feeling we're getting a rebuttal. Go ahead.
No, I don't think a rebuttal, just an answer to Delegate Ty's question. And I think to Delegate Frederickson's question as well. I also, like Delegate Frederickson, really want to see this get worked out. And I want to see something happen here. And more than anything, as someone that's championed this from day one, I do not want to let perfect become the enemy of the good as we're working through this in the best way possible. I want to make sure what we come out of here is as close to consensus as we can throughout the assembly. And anyone that talked to me before this process started knows that the ordinance that we're looking at now, the home rule petition, is far from what I would have filed on day one. But we got so much feedback from our community, and it has changed it a lot and has changed what our community's response has been significantly, and I'm happy about it. So to Delegate Ty's question, I would love for the next step, and I think the next logical step that would give delegates the opportunity to chip in and participate is to move it out of this committee. I think we should take the step of, actually filing this nice 9-page home rule petition with the clerk as a home rule petition. And then we're going to have the opportunity in front of the full assembly, to get public feedback, need to be able to actually engage with our fellow delegates who are on this committee without just hearing their comments, but actually be able to have a conversation with them where they can talk, contribute. And lastly, most importantly, open it up to amendments, because I want something that's going to pass the assembly. I would rather see a number of the changes that Delegate Frederickson has talked about and get this to 51% or more, hopefully, than I would hold my ground on any one of these policy issues and see this not successfully go to the legislature. So I think the next step is definitely opening it up to that kind of legislative process. But I also, know that there's a reality of the fact that in the end, we're never going to agree on everything with the delegates in this room. But that kind of process is going to give us an opportunity to get delegates to input their ideas, especially in writing as amendments, and then we can discuss, pick the ones that the majority of the assembly likes and wants to change, and set aside the ones that don't have a buy-in of the majority of the assembly, and hopefully come out with a product that folks can get behind, even if it's not everything they wanted. It's going to be something that reflects a consensus from Provincetown to Falmouth. So I think that's really the next step. And I think, at the chair's discretion, when we're at the right point in the meeting, I'm going to move to recommend this to full assembly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just as an aside, I agree with Deputy Speaker Gessen. This is not at all what I thought this was going to look like. And it has already changed greatly through all of these meetings and through discussions with towns. And I would especially, I would like, anybody that I wasn't allowed to, that we weren't allowed to discuss this with, Delegate Sampson, Delegate Wyman Colombo, to please put in writing, an amendment, how you think you would like it phrased, which of course can be worked on at the full assembly. But I do think having amendments is going to be a really good way to get the whole assembly's thought on things. Delegate Frederickson.
Yeah. Yes, I will continue on with my rant if that's the way you want to take it. Couple of things. Just a question. Why have we not engaged the county commissioners? They are 1/3 of our government. And have we formally asked their opinions on any of this? And is that in writing? And I talked to one who said there's been very little information on it. They've seen very little.
I'll let Deputy Speaker Gessen answer that because he's much nicer than I am. Please.
Dan, if you want to answer that, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I'll be quick. We've reached out to them. There's been at least a number of meetings that have been like public meetings where the community has come and the public was welcome, and they were affirmatively invited. And we essentially said, come speak your mind and let us know your thoughts. I know I've communicated with them individually, all three of them on this topic. Two of them as recently, individually, but as recently as this week, to let them know that there's a draft being considered at this committee meeting. And then I'll also say they've received every single public document for all these public meetings, same as every other delegate on the assembly. So I know they've been informed. Feedback that I've gotten earlier in the process has been that they want to see something in writing before they provide substantive responses. So hopefully if we get something out of committee, it could be that something in writing.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's a good answer. Hold on. One thing that has come up is to put a sunset clause on this at 10 years. And after 10 years, this goes away. We base this on calling it a crisis right now. We don't know what that's going to look like in 10 years. And we don't know what it looks like in 5 years. So I think putting a sunset clause on a fee or tax for people selling, buying homes is just chipping away at their hard-earned money. So putting a sunset clause to address the current issues, I think is reasonable. The other piece is once we somehow come up with a final document, and before it gets sent up to the legislature, we need to meet with our delegation and let them know, get their affirmative response that this is what we support, because we do know it can change. We do know it can change in any number of ways once it gets there. But we need them to back whatever we send up to them, because there's a lot of hard work going into this. And to Delegate Colombo's point, you know, we're putting a lot of money towards this, and when you look at these numbers, what it could be and what it could, it could be multi-millions of dollars that are going into more housing in various ways, whether it's assisting people with rent, having other advocacy groups getting involved, somehow getting funding for what they do. We do have to pay attention to our environment and the social aspect of the idea that we want our young 20-somethings to stay here and have families. We are, part of the reason why a lot of youngsters don't stay along is the opportunities here for social aspects. It's much different than when we were all younger. So I would like to see that we can put some of this money towards, so it's instead of 10% going to the county, take 5% and sending to environmental protection and 5% going to community enrichment that goes along with what we're going to be doing for assisting getting more housing. I know we call it a housing bill, but I think it's something we can consider. We can write it any way we want.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So you would want that 5% for environment and 5% for whatever the other one was.
Community
In
enrichment.
addition,
Yep.
community enrichment, in
Yep.
addition to the 10% for housing.
No, not in addition.
So you
to
would want
in pla-
20% for,
No, in place
from
of,
the towns.
I can tell you right now, the 10% going to the county is a non-starter. The other things they can work with, but that piece is just a non-starter
Okay.
for me. And I can't speak for everybody else.
okay. And is there anything else that you can't put into an amendment?
I think it can be open for good discussion, if we put something forward. I think the threshold's too low. That can be
Right.
debated. The idea that this is an option, and I think that was something when Dan and I met some time ago, to have local control opting in and, taking it to a different level. Those are all basically reasonable. I still don't like it because what's happening across the country, and the idea that anybody that has some type of wealth, we're going after it because we think that they can pay all this money, but that's really not the case. That's more political stuff. But this is a result of that. This is a result. We're trying to get other people to pay for a social issue. That's what we're doing. And we got to be careful and make sure it's right. So that's okay. But I think basically the county setup, that is just not, that does not make any sense to me. And I will not be in favor of that.
All right.
The other stuff I think we can work out. I don't know if we're ready to put this to the full assembly yet. But I think if we can massage it a little bit, have one more meeting at this, and we can then move it forward.
All righty. Well, we're at 5:30, and I know the clerk gets antsy if if our meetings go over an hour and a half. I would like to suggest that any such concerns from Delegate Frederickson or anybody else be put into an amendment form I'm sure Clerk Fletcher and Assistant Clerk sorry, Emma, Dvorak, will be mad at me for saying this, but I'm sure they'd be willing to help anyone with how to phrase it correctly. I'm going to ask Deputy Speaker Gesson if he'd like to make a motion for now.
So we're not going to talk about changing this. We're just going to go as is.
Well, I
You know,
think
I'll speak to it to that if that's okay, Chair Harder.
Yeah.
There's a number of I think really good ideas that came up. I think largely none of them necessarily change the overall structure of this ordinance, though they do fundamentally, even some Delegate Frederickson's ideas change chunks of it. Some ideas that I think make a lot of sense to add. But being respectful to the fact that we're a 15-member body, I don't see a lot of fruitfulness in us going into the weeds now, and as 5 members of the Assembly making significant policy changes by changing, the million, the 2 million, only to bring it to the full Assembly and have different opinions there. I think we've reached the point here where this can come in front of the full Assembly as a substantive document that the Assembly deserves the right to provide feedback on, and as a full body to decide what matters as an amendment and what they would want to see retained. I don't necessarily think we're at a point anymore where 5 members voting one town, one vote is as representative as the full body voting with our respective percentages. I think that's a better way to move forward amending this home rule petition. So having said that, I'm going to move that we file this with the clerk and recommend it for debate at the full Assembly.
Second.
Okay, so now further discussion. I'm going to agree with that because I agree with Deputy Speaker Gesson. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to. We've all talked to as a committee, and we've really you've got the same questions, and other people have the same concerns that we've been discussing within our little confines for a while. And I do agree that there are things that need to be discussed. And I do think that it's time to take it out of our little cabal and bring this for now to the full Assembly so that everyone at the Assembly can debate it, so that we can see if people want to make amendments. I thoroughly doubt that, in fact, I can pretty much guarantee that we're not going to vote on this anytime soon. But it's time to open the discussion to the rest of the Assembly and get their feedback. It's definitely going to have to come back, I believe, to this committee just for the final verbiage. I hate that word. And I also think we are going to have a public hearing on this, an official public hearing listed in the newspaper and all that sort of stuff. So that's my thought on why I think we should send this to the Assembly. But I want to ask Clerk Fletcher if I messed that up in any way.
Mess that up is the wrong way to put it. I just want to point out that we don't generally deal with home rule petitions, although the charter allows us to. And so it's not officially an ordinance, but my understanding has been from the beginning and through both the last speaker and this speaker that the commitment has been made to have a public hearing and to treat this like we would treat an ordinance, which means it may get referred by the Assembly or the speaker back to the Economic Affairs Committee. It may see other committees. It may, but we will definitely have at least one public hearing that's noticed in the newspaper in front of the full Assembly before it's finished. And so it's got a very long path even after it's introduced under our rules, because since the beginning, I've been told that we would be treating this like any other ordinance. So,
Thank you. Yeah, that's the plan. I don't want this to be a zebra. I don't think it serves anybody's it doesn't serve anyone to have this be some funky little thing we've created in this committee. So Delegate Frederickson.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the process has been rather choppy in the past, but we're moving beyond that. It'd be nice to spell out what the process is. I think the clerk just kind of went through that a little bit, but it's still a little choppy. And even the idea that, we're speaking for municipalities. So we got to make sure we get this back to our municipalities in its finished version before we need to get there. Okay. It's an odd thing that we're doing a home rule petition for a municipality. So we just got to make sure we do that when we get this final version, however it passes or doesn't pass, to them and get the feedback. And also what is I've noticed a few times that we often are getting documents on this like 2 days before the meeting, and God forbid you haven't opened up your email. You're like at the meeting, you're like, what are you talking about? So we need a little, like we can't just have an open discussion next week and we don't have all these documents, and then expect to get a good conversation going. So we need to make it. So that's part of the process. And I'll be quiet from now. I'm done for tonight, I
No,
think.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Clerk Fletcher, is there anything you want to add about the process? I mean, will we be discussing this at the next meeting? An initial discussion at the next meeting? Or is this, since it's not an ordinance, let me phrase it better. Sorry. May we discuss this at the next meeting since it's not technically an ordinance? Or do we have to hand it in at the next meeting and then wait until January to discuss?
okay. I'm going to be very careful not to try not to editorialize. I don't know.
Sure.
As the speaker hasn't, worked with me to draft the business calendar yet. I do anticipate that there'll be a report from this committee about this meeting, and perhaps a presentation just like the one that the deputy speaker gave to the whole body. But whether to discuss that any further would be up to the speaker to put on the calendar, and then up to all of you. And also, by all of you, I mean all 15 of you voting together. I can tell you how an ordinance works, which is you would, someone, either one delegate or the board altogether, or several delegates would introduce a legislative measure to the full assembly. The full assembly would then decide where it was going to refer that ordinance. And our rules state if the full assembly does not decide where to refer by the end of the meeting, then the speaker can make that determination. And we have a longstanding custom that no ordinance is put on the assembly for a vote until it's had a public hearing and it's had a committee meeting. That's how an ordinance would be handled. So to sum up, I do anticipate that there's going to be a report from this committee at that meeting. There may be a presentation just like was given here again to the full body, and whatever else the speaker wants to put on there would be on there. And the ordinance process is, like I said, if anybody's got any questions or the public has any questions, happy to answer them.
So if we're not going to vote, then we'd be able to at least discuss this next week. I think that would be helpful. Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Yes, I mean, just as we're talking about process, I don't get to decide anything unilaterally at all, but I would, in an ideal world, I think a process that makes sense, and I think it would be appropriate for this committee to also kind of take the process that we would like to see is for the full assembly to receive this finally as a document that they can send to their communities and propose amendments to, for the delegates to get presentation on what is inside this, same as we just went over. Maybe I'll be able to sharpen it a little bit so I don't take up as much time for folks. And then for delegates to be able to submit amendments in writing. And I think that as procedural as that is really important, because it's one thing to discuss things abstractly as we saw, and it's a completely different thing when you're actually looking at a piece of paper, an amendment, and how different words interact with each other. And I think it makes sense for some of those amendments to come back to this committee, and for this committee to make recommendations on amendments to the full assembly, but for any delegate to be able to present those amendments, not just us five.
Right.
But then for us to make recommendations on those amendments, and then for it to return to the full assembly with those recommendations, and then for there to be a public hearing where communities get to provide feedback, and then at least one meeting where delegates have an opportunity to, tell this committee that they actually do want something included that we didn't, or vice versa, to remove something that we did decide to include as a full body, and then to have a vote. I think that's a process that conceptually makes sense to me. And I'm seeing a lot of nodding on the screen, so I assume it makes sense to everyone, but I'm not going to have it speak for anyone. But that I think that's something that, as Deputy Speaker and with Chair Harder here and other delegates, we should continue the conversation about the process that makes sense. But that's an outline of what I would kind of envision if it were up to me.
Okay, Delegate Frederickson.
I said I wouldn't do it, but I did. So we can't make amendments here or discuss it. We've already discussed it. So you just want to present what we already wrote and send it up.
Yeah, I
feel, mind you, this is my first meeting here, so
right,
you've been involved,
exactly.
and I respect the fact that you've done it.
Right.
But some of these things are concerning to me, and it can lead to the success or failure.
Right.
So it's worth discussing.
I feel like it's too early today to worry about amendments. I think it would be better to get the entire assembly's views, initial views on this, as Delegate Gessen said, and go over it with them like he did, explain the things, because then everyone will have a chance to make amendments, not just usins. I think it'd be better to give everyone that option. I know Delegate Wyman Colombo would like to, so I think it's better that we present this draft, making sure people understand it's a draft, present it to the full assembly, let people have a initial discussion about it, and explain, how the process will work with amendments, with involving towns, with public meetings. Because I really truly believe that at this point, our little committee has had our fingerprints all over it, and I think it's time for other people, including you, to be able to put their fingerprints on it. But I just think at this point, because other people are going to share your opinions, not all of them, some of them, or they might agree with you but want to tweak it somewhere different. So I think it's better now to involve everyone in this conversation and involve everyone in and give everyone the chance to add amendments. I think it's actually too early today to do that, because we do want everyone to feel included in the process. So having said that, and the fact that it's 5:45, I am going to ask the clerk for a roll call vote on us on sending this draft to the full assembly for discussion is that what we're voting on? Deputy Speaker Gessen, is that what you want? And Delegate Clerk Fletcher?
I would say, yes, I would say we are voting, if I remember correctly, and I'll just refresh. I moved that we recommend this home rule petition for consideration of the full assembly.
Okay, and is that what you seconded?
That's what I second.
Thank you. All right. Clerk Fletcher. Oh, wait, Delegate Frederickson.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, I understand that. I'm just gonna let you know, I'm gonna vote against it, but I just want it to be known that I don't want, I like the process that would be discussed, but I don't agree with the document as it is right now. So I don't want to be construed that, yeah, I think this is a great thing and we should do this, but I understand, I just want that to be on the record that I feel it needs more discussion or changes
Right.
before we send it. That's my feeling. That's okay. But I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, thank you. Clerk Fletcher.
Delegate Frederickson.
No,
All right. Let's see who we got on here.
Gee.
Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Yes.
Okay.
Gallagher.
Chair Harder.
Yeah,
Nope, Delegate Harder for Delegate Omen.
no, Delegate Gallagher for delegate. Oh,
Omen, yes.
you said Delegate. Harper.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Ty,
Yes.
4-1. Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. And really, everybody, thank you. This is a very long process and it's very, it's hard work, but I think it's good work and important work. And I appreciate everyone, really doing the work and focusing on this. And I will, ask Deputy Speaker Gessen to speak.
I think I might have beat you to it, but I was just going to say thank you everyone for the work. I look forward to working with everyone to make it better and continue improving it through an organized process. And I move that we adjourn.
Do I have a
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Oh, we need a roll call because we're remote. Sorry, Clerk Fletcher, I forgot.
You do. Delegate Frederickson,
yes,
Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Yeah.
Chair Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher for Dean Omen,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Ty.
Yes.
That's everyone, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Emma
you.
and Ian, for all your hard work. I'm feeling very good about this. Thank you.
Thank you.